thanks to Nigel for a brilliant show live from Luton. It's 8 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan. Between now and 9, in my big opinion, we now live in lawless Britain. Who could blame Tory MP Lee Anderson for wanting to bring back capital punishment? We need a culture in which criminals are afraid that they will be caught and afraid of the consequences. We'll also debate that later in the show. Should we bring back capital punishment? What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Plus tonight, as rugby chiefs caused a storm by banning the song Delilah, is stifling political correctness and censorship destroying creativity? We'll be joined live on the programme by Elton John's lyricist, with whom he's had a string of hits, Gary Osborne, who's deeply worried about the future of music. Plus, we'll get Gary's reaction to the sad death of Burt Bacharach. Meanwhile, there are new free speech concerns, as pubs could be forced to hire bouncers to police boozy or offensive chats under new laws. Get arrested for banter with your mates down the pub. More evidence that the world has gone mad. We'll get reaction from the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young. Plus, the producer of a shocking new GBNews documentary joins us to discuss the horrors and scale of grooming gangs in Britain. Lots to get through. My big opinion next, and my solution for lawless Britain. But first, the headlines with the always well-behaved Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thanks very much and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight, and it's bad news. More than 19,000 people are now known to have died after Monday's earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria. Around 70 members of the UK's International Search and Rescue Team joined the effort to try to find survivors in the rubble. Hundreds of thousands of people have been left homeless in freezing conditions, with the World Health Organization now warning many more could die without shelter. Well, today, British charities appealed for funding to help those affected by the disaster, with the UK government saying it'll match up to £5 million in public donations. Some breaking news we received within the last half an hour or so. The former Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, has announced she's standing down as an MP at the next general election. Ms Dorries has represented Mid-Bedfordshire since 2005. Publicising her new television show, she said she loves serving her constituents, and it's been an honour for her for the best part of 2 decades. Now, members of Parliament will get a 2.9% pay rise from the 1st of April. That would bring their overall salary from around £84,000 to £86,000. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority says the pay increase for MPs was the same as the average increase in pay for public sector employees last year. An update on Nicola Bulley now, and Lancashire Police say their search for the missing mother of 2 has now moved towards the sea. The force saying it's searching further downstream, where the River Wyre becomes tidal. Officers have also issued a 48-hour dispersal order for St Michael's on Wyre after an abandoned house was reportedly searched by members of the public trying to solve the case themselves, then posting footage on social media. The 45-year-old was last seen 13 days ago walking her dog. And lastly, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed an EU summit in Brussels. He's lobbying leaders to provide more weapons to Ukraine in the fight against Russia, which he's referred to as the biggest anti-European force of the modern world. Number 10 says it won't send fighter jets to Ukraine if that puts the UK at risk. And the Foreign and Defence Secretaries are currently in Italy meeting their counterparts to discuss galvanising more support for Ukraine. Those are the latest news stories on GB News. You are up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Back now to Laurence Fox, but in the seat tonight, Mark Dolan.
Thanks, Polly. We'll see you in an hour. Coming up, Elton John's lyricist on Burt Bacharach's sad death and his reaction to the banning of the song Delilah. Plus, why bouncers might arrest you for saying something offensive in the pub. And should we bring back hanging? Lots to get through, but first, my big opinion. There's no getting away from it. Britain has become a soft touch on crime. We learnt yesterday that the Prevent programme, designed to tackle the huge threat of terrorism, has more or less overlooked the main issue, Islamic fundamentalism, which, to give you a quick elevator pitch, stands for the total obliteration of the West. Charming. Given the disproportionate threat this toxic ideology poses to all British citizens, it's shocking but not surprising that just 16% of cases referred by Prevent related to Islamism. It seems the authorities are happy to let ISIS plot more human devastation for fear of offending anyone or being accused of Islamophobia. Britain is clearly a soft touch when it comes to organised grooming gangs, which is the subject of a stunning new GBNews documentary which airs on Saturday at 8 o'clock. Its producer, Charlie Peters, joins me shortly. Essentially, vulnerable young women have been abused, raped and exploited by men. These men have evaded justice in spite of warnings from the local community and victims themselves, because the authorities don't want to be called racist, so they'd rather let young girls continue to be raped instead. Brilliant. This country is a soft touch on burglary, with just 6% of burglaries leading to an arrest last year in England and Wales. 6% for a shocking and invasive crime. Based upon that statistic, burglary has effectively been decriminalised. The same for rape, domestic abuse and sexual assault, which are shockingly underreported. 6.3 million crimes were reported last year. This is out of control. 6.3 million crimes. Just think of the number not reported. Stabbings have become the norm, with drug gangs controlling their own postcode and with residents living in terror and afraid to leave the house after dark. Let's be fair to our coppers. The force has seen unprecedented cuts dating back to 2010. Brave police officers, men and women, have had a real terms pay cut for years, and they put their lives on the line every day. And legally, they can't go on strike. Senior leadership within our police forces will rightly argue the demands on their resources are unprecedented, including cybercrime. And they're doing everything in their power and within their budget to tackle crime. They have the toughest job in the country, I get it. But right now, it's not working. And sentencing is a problem too, with the likes of evil paedophile Gary Glitter getting out of prison halfway through his 16-year sentence. How do his victims feel about that? Today we saw a lot of pearl clutching from the media and political elite about Tory MP Lee Anderson's suggestion that we bring back capital punishment for the worst crimes. Who could blame him? He wants things to change. He's not talking about a parking ticket here. This is evil mass murderers who cannot be rehabilitated. There is a strong argument to be made that they sacrifice their own life when they take someone else's. Look at this chart demonstrating how bad crime has become compared to a century ago. It shows the rates of recorded offences per 100,000 people, so it's adjusted for population size. And the rates of crime, as you can see, are through the roof. Welcome to hell. As journalist Ed West has pointed out, there averaged just 400 street robberies a year nationally during the 1930s, when absolute poverty was much higher. In the year 2000, in Lambeth, just one of London's 32 boroughs, there were 8,000 street robberies. So that's 400 nationwide in the 30s and 8,000 in one London borough in the year 2000. Brits go about their lives now expecting to be victims of crime, expecting their phone to be snatched out of their hand as they walk down the street. Brits expect their homes to be broken into. They expect their car, motorbike or bicycle to be stolen at any moment. And the expectation that the police will do anything about these crimes is close to zero. People I know, and I'm sure people that you know, have been a victim of crime and often don't even report it because it feels so hopeless. Woke policing, which would rather see a copper turn up at your house because of a supposedly offensive Facebook post, is letting real criminals off the hook, which is a crime in itself. So, we need more police officers, more prisons, tougher punishments, and a culture in which those who break the law face a genuine fear of getting caught. Being safe is a human right and should be the expectation of any civilised country. Britain should be one of the safest countries in the world, and back in the day it was, but it's turning into a lawless hellhole. It's time for the police to raise their game and start tackling real crime. And it's time for underperforming police chiefs to be taken in for questioning. They have no right to remain silent. Now, as I mentioned, a shocking new documentary about grooming gangs is to air tomorrow night at 8 p.m. here on GBNews. Truly groundbreaking television journalism. And the man that's put this film together is our very own Charlie Peters. Hi, Charlie.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Good to have you on the show. I'm going to get to your new exclusive, which features in the film on Saturday night. But can you just give us an overview, for those that aren't across this story, the scale of crime that we've seen in the last few years?
Well, in the grooming gang scandal in particular, that's an exclusive coming this week, and I'm going to hold that back, but it is much larger than I think people expect.
And we're talking about thousands of vulnerable young women. Correct.
Thousands of vulnerable young women, many of them reporting their suffering to the police and being fobbed off still, and often being criminalised themselves. So a significant number...
Actually arrested?
Yeah, arrested or treated by the police with disdain or treated as though they are the criminals themselves for what they are experiencing. I've multiple case studies reported to me recently of ongoing cases where this is happening, and your viewers can tune in this weekend to find out more.
Have they been the victim of prejudice by coppers thinking, well, what's this young floozy on about?
That is often the kind of perspective that they take.
Or she brought it on herself.
There we go.
Or she's a troublemaker herself.
Or they see it as a lifestyle choice. And we know from a report into South Yorkshire Police published last year that police officers took the view in some cases in Yorkshire that having an Asian boyfriend was considered a lifestyle choice and a fashion accessory. That was how girls who were teenage girls, underage girls, were being abused. That's how their suffering was described. I have found in my investigation over the last year that attitude is still there in some places in the country, and many people involved on the ground, activists and whistleblowers, report the same thing to me too.
And boyfriends, they were not?
Absolutely not. No, they use a grooming model of exploitation where they kind of treat their victims as though they are being loved. They give them gifts, they give them alcohol, but those gifts and those joy rides in taxis and free food and free drink, often drugs and alcohol, that is sandwiched by a cocktail of horrific abuse. Violence, torture, exploitation, trafficking. Some of the stories really are shocking, and they'll have to tune in on Saturday, 8 p.m. to learn more.
Indeed, and of course I'll be watching. It's an hour before my show. It's an important piece of journalism. Why do you think the rest of the media have stayed away from this story?
Well, tonight I've broken an exclusive about 4 councillors who knew and stayed silent about the extent of abuse in the town when they were briefed in 2005. The first police operation in Rotherham looking into the grooming gang started in 2008, but they told journalists when this story broke in 2014 that the police told them to stay quiet. Now, I can't find any evidence of any police operation between 2005 and that first operation in 2008. Indeed, when I spoke to some of these councillors, all 4 of them still serving, in the last month or so, I've heard some conflicting stories. One councillor told me that, yes, the police were definitely there. They told me to stay silent. Another councillor refused to speak to me, saying what they said in 2014 remains the case. They won't comment again. But a third councillor, Rose McNeely, said, oh, the police weren't even there. Nobody investigated this very important part of the story when it came out in 2014. I think a lot of journalists, a lot of them did a great job, but some of them took at face value what councillors, local politicians, local members of the government and the establishment told them at the time. They didn't dive deep enough.
So you wouldn't really lay the blame at local reporters or the media generally. You would say it's really at the feet of the local authorities and the police.
Absolutely. But the reason why I've been able to have so many exclusives in this in the last month, just in the last month, is because I am looking into a story, and GBNews is looking into a story that few are looking into across the media in general.
Yeah.
Now, other journalists did an amazing job in 2012 and 2014. The Times, Andrew Norfolk in particular, blowing the lid off this scandal. But I think for a lot of people, this story was too difficult and it made them too nervous due to the ethnicity of the perpetrators, due to the demographic of the victims and survivors, and they've pushed it into the long grass. We've had these government reviews and people have said, that's it, sorted, gone away, we've dealt with it entirely. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Councillors who knew and stayed silent in 2005, still serving on the council. Rose McNeely, who knew and did nothing for 3 years, she's now the head of the Ethics Commission and Standards Commission at Rotherham Borough Council.
Do we have evidence that she knew about these crimes?
Yes, I've spoken to a whistleblower and she confirmed to me that she delivered that lecture, that seminar in 2005, and Rose McNeely herself confirmed to me on the phone that she was there. In fact, another councillor, Alan Atkin, who was also at that meeting in 2005 and also stayed silent for 3 years, he apologised to me for staying silent. When I asked him why he hadn't said anything for 3 years before he knew that a police operation was going on, he said, I was just getting on with my life. I was just getting on with things at the time. I have to say, when he said that to me, I was absolutely silent on the phone. I was absolutely shocked. But he said it because that, I think, reflects the sort of dismissive attitude held by lots of people in the government and in local authorities and indeed the police, unfortunately, at the time. These girls didn't matter.
And what would you put this conspiracy of silence down to? Was it simply fear of being called racist, or was there more to it?
Well, the failures in the council at the time were so widespread that it is very difficult to conclude any other way that they were in denial about the extent of the problem that was going on. They knew what was going on. I think the racial nervousness undoubtedly was a part of it. They didn't want to discuss the background of the perpetrators. But also it reflects very badly on their performance as local politicians. If such disastrous, 1,400 victims in 2014, we now know it's 1,500 over a 16-year period. These are extraordinary numbers. So only they can say why they were silent for those 3 years. I've tried to ask them. They've given me mixed responses. But, yeah, people have to ask them and keep asking the question why this happened, because it hasn't stopped. It's still ongoing. There are people who are still fobbing off these girls, and the pressure needs to be kept on those who are in charge of making sure justice is delivered. And
your film will help to do just that. This important documentary airs on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, unmissable TV. Charlie, thank you so much for that. Now, coming up is political correctness destroying the music industry with songs like Delilah being banned. We'll speak live to Elton John's lyricist, Gary Osborne, who will also react to the sad death of Burt Bacharach. Plus, are pubs about to hire bouncers to police what you say when you're having a beer in case it's offensive? You won't believe that story. We'll get reaction from free speech champion Toby Young. But next, should we bring back capital punishment for the worst crimes? We will hear from both sides and it's going to be lively. Plus, I want your views. Mark at gbnews.uk. See you in 3.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Music legend Burt Bacharach has sadly died. We'll get reaction from Elton John's lyricist before 9. But first, the brand new Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson, has already made a splash with news that he would like to see a return to capital punishment for the worst crimes. Lee Kuan Yew, the founder of modern Singapore, would certainly agree. Take a listen.
Also have one of the highest rates of capital punishment.
If we could kill them 100 times, we would.
And if you bring heroin into Singapore...
You hang.
You hang.
You hang. Without capital punishment, our transshipment rate as a drug center would quadruple, and our internal consumption would go up by a multiple of 10.
Well, it might sound harsh, but Singapore is a wealthy, ultra-modern state with some of the lowest crime rates in the world. So, does it act as a disincentive to criminals, or is capital punishment an outdated medieval practice which risks a miscarriage of justice if courts get the judgment wrong? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome two good friends of mine. Niall Gardner, director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the National Heritage Foundation, a former top advisor to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and Jerry Hayes, 90s TV star, ex-Tory MP and criminal barrister. Jerry, let me start with you. Bring back capital punishment, because once you've been murdered, you can't hurt anyone ever again.
Yeah, that's a fairly good point. But of course, it's totally inaccurate because, firstly, my grandfather was murdered years ago. So if anyone should be in favour of capital punishment, it's me. But the law is not about retribution. It's protecting the public. And the one thing that was made clear all through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and we used to have debates on this once every parliament, and they were pretty grim stuff, is that it's an encouragement. It's an encouragement to the IRA because you made martyrs. Can you imagine the Islamic terrorists who believe they're going to go into paradise for killing someone where they haven't been killed by our police force or soldiers? They're being killed by the state. So, you know, never mind the mistakes which are made, which are pretty serious. The fact is, it would be an absolute recruiting sergeant major for the Islamic terrorists, and that's a big mistake.
But can you tell me why the Manchester bomber deserves any further life?
Oh, he probably doesn't, but that's not really the point, is it? The point is protecting the public. I could be, outraged, and I was outraged, and I was upset when my grandfather was murdered. But then you have to put your thinking cap on and say, well, are we protecting the public by what we do? And of course, we wouldn't be. Do these people deserve to stay alive? No, they don't. But we're a civilized country, and we have to protect our public.
Niall Gardner, you worked at close quarters with Margaret Thatcher, then Lady Thatcher. Do you know what her view on this was?
She never voted for it.
Niall?
Yeah, Mark, I apologise. The connection isn't great here, but I would like to say this. I do think that Margaret Thatcher today, if she was still with us, would certainly be in support, I think, of very tough anti-crime measures, and I think she would have supported the return of the death penalty. And I think that Lee Anderson is absolutely right to be calling for the return of the death penalty. We need to see tough measures in place in order to deal with crime, common sense measures. I think a clear majority of Conservative Party supporters would support the return of the death penalty. And where the death penalty is used, countries such as Japan, South Korea, Singapore, for example, countries with extremely low levels of crime, they're among the safest nations in the world. And having the death penalty, I think, is a key part of that. And here in the United States, over 27 states retain the death penalty. It is supported by a majority of the US population. It's not a subject of huge controversy, frankly, in America. And I think that calls for a return for the death penalty in the United Kingdom. I think if you held a referendum in Britain on this, I'd expect the majority of the British people would support this measure as a way of dealing with some of the most heinous, evil criminals in the UK at this time. So I do believe that Margaret Thatcher actually would have supported the return of the death penalty as a common solution for dealing with high levels of crime.
No, some of us knew Margaret very well. I knew her very well when she was leader of the opposition. I used to advise her. I knew her very well when she was prime minister. And I can tell you, she never supported the death penalty, and she wouldn't support it now for all the reasons I've mentioned, because it would put British citizens in danger.
However,
how would it put British citizens in danger?
Well, of course it would.
What's the logic for that?
I'll tell you what, you may not have heard what I was saying before. We used to have all these debates in all the parliaments, the three parliaments, and I did. And the one thing that all the chiefs of staff and security told us was, look, if you want more IRA terrorists being encouraged, like Bobby Sands and all the rest of it, if you want more martyrs, you have the death penalty. Now it's got worse. You've got the Islamic terrorists who believe they are going to be sent to paradise. This is a recruiting site for
Let me
death.
respond to that, actually. If I could respond,
Niall.
I think the fewer terrorists we have on the streets, whether they're Islamist terrorists or IRA, etc., the better off we are, the safer the country is, actually, if you remove individuals who pose
That's not the
tremendous
argument.
threat.
Let Niall finish.
That's Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, yes, I worked for Lady Thatcher. I knew her very well. She believed in very tough law and order measures. And I'm in no doubt that she would be supportive today of harsh, tough measures against evil, villainous criminals, including terrorists. After all, she faced a direct terrorist threat. If we can remove these terrorists off the streets, if we can apply the death penalty against those who are responsible for killing large numbers of innocent people, we should do that. Let's make Britain safer, and let's deal with evil by taking evil off the streets.
Now, Jerry, I'm just going to jump in with a point of order that Margaret Thatcher, I'm being told by my team, Margaret Thatcher supported the idea of the death penalty as part of her election manifesto in 1997. 1979, forgive me. Sorry, 1979, clearly. When she became Prime Minister for the first time, she became leader in 75, and she adopted the policy in 79. It didn't happen, but she supported it.
But for every single vote we had in the House of Commons, she voted against it.
OK. What about the victims, finally, Jerry?
Well, I agree. But if you make mistakes, if you encourage, and this is the whole point I'm trying to get across to Niall, but I'm failing miserably. You've got to protect the public. If you actually have a recruiting sergeant for the terrorists, as you will, because they want to be killed by the state.
Okay.
They want to be made martyrs.
Objection sustained. Niall, two final points. Could you respond to this idea that you'll make martyrs out of terrorists? And also, what if there's a miscarriage of justice? What if the courts get it wrong, which of course they do?
Well, I think firstly, these terrorists will carry out their atrocities no matter what the policy is. And the idea that the death penalty will turn them into martyrs is just ridiculous, frankly. And the more terrorists we take out and eliminate, the better and the safer the British people are. And with regard to your second point, certainly there is a big debate here in the United States over that issue. But in the vast majority of cases of criminals being executed, the law has been served. I mean, there's a very small number of cases, I think, where there has been injustice, but the vast majority, I think, of executions have been perfectly lawful, legal. The U.S. Constitution, of course, allows for the execution of criminals, and the Supreme Court has weighed in on this. And I do believe we have a safer society when evil people are removed from that society. And I do think that if there was a popular vote in the UK at this time on this issue, I do believe a majority of British people would vote in favour of bringing back the death penalty.
All the opinion polls are against it. The only
I think it's marginal, Jerry. It's marginal, but a fascinating debate which will continue to rage on. My thanks to Jerry Hayes, criminal barrister, former Tory MP, and Niall Gardner, director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. Gentlemen, a fascinating debate. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? After the break, we'll be revealing the results of our exclusive text poll. Has Britain gone soft on crime? That's the topic of my big opinion, which you can now see on our Twitter feed at GB News. Next up is political correctness destroying the music industry with songs like Delilah being banned. We're going to speak live to Elton John's lyricist Gary Osborne, who's also going to react to the sad death of Burt Bacharach. And are pubs about to hire bouncers to police what you say when you're having a beer in case it's offensive? You won't believe that story. I'm not making it up. We're going to get reaction from free speech champion Toby Young. He's next.
This Saturday at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood has been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, in a world-exclusive interview, GB News' brand new presenter, John Cleese, speaks for the first time about the shock return of Fawlty Towers and hits back at the woke critics of the much-loved British sitcom. Plus, with a bidding war in the offing, will the comeback series be screened on its original home, the BBC? Tune in for Dan, John Cleese and more of Britain's top commentators from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. Now, we asked you, has Britain gone soft on crime? The results are in. Conclusive. A landslide. 94.6% said yes, we're now soft on crime. 5.4% voted no. Well, let me tell you, that 5.4% are very lucky and clearly live in a very peaceful area. Let's have a look at some of your emails. They're coming in thick and fast. Mark at gbnews.uk on the death penalty. David says, hi, Mark, I support reintroducing the death penalty soonest for first-degree murder. William says, Mark, the Conservative Party, and on that subject, Jerry Hayes is completely wrong. Margaret Thatcher stated in a TV interview that she believed if someone took a life, i.e. committed murder, they should forfeit their own. Thank you for that clarification, William. I'll get to more of your emails shortly. But lots to get through, including reaction to the sad death of music legend Burt Bacharach from Elton John's lyricist Gary Osborne. Plus, Gary's going to respond to that shocking story of the song Delilah being banned. But let's talk about more woke madness now. The Sun newspaper report that pub bosses fear they could have to hire banter bouncers to police boozy chats under proposed laws. Rules to protect workers from being harassed may give them the right to sue if jokes or comments they hear offend them. An update to the Equalities Act aims to stop people getting abused at work, piling extra rules onto bosses to try to stamp it out. But critics say it will leave punters unable to shout at the telly or crack a joke with their mates without putting landlords at risk of being sued by upset staff. This story would be hilarious if it wasn't so troubling. So let's speak to free speech champion, the founder of the Free Speech Union, no less, Toby Young. Toby, is this story for real?
It is for real. It's incredible because Rishi Sunak, when he was campaigning for the leadership last summer, said that we needed to do something about the Equality Act because it was responsible for so much woke nonsense. Well, he's doing something about the Equality Act, but he's going to make the woke nonsense 10 times worse. So what this proposed change to the Equality Act will mean is that at the moment, employers are only liable if one of their employees is harassed by another employee. What this change will mean is that if an employee is harassed by a third party they come into contact with in the course of their work, a member of the public, a customer, they'll also be able to sue their employers. And we know from employment cases in the Employment Tribunal that if a worker overhears a remark that they find offensive made by one of their colleagues, they can successfully sue their employer for harassment if they feel upset in virtue of one of their protected characteristics. So what this extension means is that if a barmaid overhears a couple of customers telling a dirty joke, she'll be able to sue her landlord, her boss. And in order to mitigate against the financial risk associated with this new liability, publicans will have to employ banter bouncers to police the conversations of their customers, to make sure they don't say anything likely to offend any members of their staff. And it's not just pubs, it also applies to football stadiums. If a football fan shouts at a linesman who he thinks has made a poor decision...
Which is part of the pleasure of going to a football match.
Which is part of the fun of going to a football match. If a football fan shouts, "Are you blind?" to the linesman, and there's a partially sighted steward employed by the football club who overhears that comment, they could then sue the football club for harassment. And in order to prevent that, they're going to have to police what fans say to an even greater extent than they do at the moment. It'll apply to hotels. You know, a woman will not be able to go into a hotel wearing a T-shirt saying adult human female, because some of the hotel staff, if they're trans, might legitimately claim that they feel harassed by that comment and be able to sue their employers. So the hotels will have to make sure that no gender-critical feminists likely to wear T-shirts like that refuse to use the preferred gender pronouns of their trans or non-binary staff are admitted to the hotel. It'll mean that we never get through to a person when we call up a bank or the local authority, because, you know, the way to protect themselves, what employers will do is they'll stop people in these customer-facing roles dealing with members of the public. It'll lead to... I talked to someone in the hospitality trade. What does it mean for your business if you're going to become liable for harassment if one of your employees feels harassed by a comment made by a customer? He said it'll accelerate automation. We'll just replace the wait staff, the people serving, with robots. Is that what we really want? Is that what this government's trying to achieve?
And also a Stasi-like culture in which your conversations are being listened into. And there was that legislation in Scotland, the hate crime legislation, that potentially allowed somebody to get arrested for making a crude joke at home in the privacy of their own four walls. I mean, that's the direction of travel. The Free Speech Union is fighting this all the way.
The Free Speech Union is fighting this. I mean, we are arguing to the government that at the very least there needs to be a proper consultation. There needs to be some proper scrutiny of this major change to the Equality Act. The Equality Act, which was passed by Labour in 2010, has had far-reaching consequences across every workplace in the country. It's poisoned the atmosphere in many workplaces. It's why, you know, members of staff are told they have to do unconscious bias training courses, why more and more words and phrases are banned in the workplace all the time, why it's now more or less mandatory in some workplaces to declare your gender pronouns and use your colleagues' preferred gender pronouns. That poison is now going to spread to bars and hotels and football grounds and nightclubs. I mean, this is a major change to the law, but it's being brought through in the form of a private member's bill. A private member's bill being brought by a Lib Dem MP, which is being supported by the government. No real scrutiny. This is going to happen under the radar. And suddenly we're going to wake up and find every time we go to the pub, every time we go to a restaurant, every time we go to a football ground, we're going to be policed and controlled. And, you know, if you say to the ref, "Are you blind?" if you tell a dirty joke in a pub, you'll face a lifetime ban.
Yes, I'd love to verbally abuse you now just to exercise my free speech, but you're far too brilliant. You're far too clever and you're far too important in this country. You are, of course, the founder of the Free Speech Union. My thanks to Toby Young. He's also the editor of the Daily Sceptic newspaper. I should argue and counterbalance the government and those behind its legislation want to make sure that people in the workplace are not subjected to abuse. They're working, they're trying to do their job, and this legislation, they would argue, is there to support them so they're not subjected to language which could offend. Look, it's all about opinions, isn't it? What's yours? Before 9, as rugby chiefs cause a storm by banning the singing of the Tom Jones hit Delilah, is stifling political correctness, censoring and destroying art really bad news for creativity? We'll be joined live on the programme by Elton John's lyricist, with whom he's had a string of hits, Gary Osborne, who's deeply worried about the future of music. Plus, Gary will react to the sad news of Burt Bacharach's death, of course, music legend. So we'll talk about woke pop songs next. Don't go anywhere.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess I've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Now, you would have heard the news last week that Tom Jones's hit song Delilah has been axed from Welsh rugby games at Cardiff's Principality Stadium, where fans have been singing that song for years. This over the storyline of the song in which a jealous lover murders his female partner. A stadium spokesman has said Delilah will not feature on the playlist for choirs for rugby internationals at the Principality. They went on to say the Welsh Rugby Union condemns domestic violence of any kind. We've previously sought advice from subject matter experts on the issue of censoring the song, and we're respectfully aware that it's problematic and upsetting to some supporters because of its subject matter. OK, well, let's speak to one of the country's foremost pop lyricists who's had a string of hits with Sir Elton John, including Blue Eyes, Part-Time Love and Little Genie, as well as being the principal lyricist behind the incredibly successful concept album and now live stage show, Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds. Gary Osborne, welcome to GB News.
Thanks for the plug, Mark, but please, you've got to stop calling me Elton John's lyricist, because he's got several lyricists, and I only wrote about 30 with him. Bernie Taupin at least 300. So
that is true.
Don't get me in trouble with Bernie or Tim Rice, who also wrote some fabulous songs with Elton.
No, I definitely won't.
Just one group.
Well, that's good, and I think you're absolutely right, of course, but you are behind some of Elton's best albums, including A Single Man, which features, in my opinion, one of the top 5 love songs that Elton John's ever written, which is called Shine On Through. But listen, we'll get to your back catalogue shortly. Your reaction to the banning of Delilah because it glamorises domestic violence?
Well, it's a joke, isn't it? I don't think anybody ever listened to that song and went out and killed somebody. If they did, then we're in trouble with the operas like Carmen, which has been running for nearly 200 years. Nobody's used as a defence. Oh, well, I saw Carmen, so it's OK for me to stab my wife. It just doesn't happen. There's one line in Delilah. Delilah is a fantastic song. Tom Jones has had about 50 hits in about 50 years. And in their popularity, Delilah always comes out top. In spite of the fact that Green, Green Grass of Home was #1 for 7 weeks, the one they love is Delilah. It's not just the words, it's the tune, it's that fabulous arrangement by Les Reed, where when people sing, my, Delilah, the audience go, ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. They can't help it. They've got to do it because it's a great arrangement of a great tune. The line that bothers people, I felt the knife in my hand and she laughed no more. That's 12 words in which he describes possibly a murder. We're not sure. You called it a murder. It might just have been a graze. He might have just grazed her. But whatever happened, it's all described. It's probably a murder, yes. And it happens, and it's described because songwriting is the art of compression. See, Othello takes 3 hours to tell you that Othello kills Desdemona. This only takes 3 minutes and it gets the job done. But the funny thing is, the people that are criticising it, they haven't really listened to it. You'd think that the BBC, on their website, they say, well, Othello, he shows remorse, whereas the killer in Delilah doesn't. Well, he hasn't listened to the song because he clearly says, forgive me, Delilah, I just couldn't take any more. Not only that, we know he gets his comeuppance because before they come to break down the door. So he's going down for this. It's not a victim. It's not a crime that he gets away with. It's a song. It's a snatch of life. It's a little vignette. It's like a play or a novel, only considerably more compressed. It tells a story. Most songs are about love. It's hard to write a good love song because there are so many of them. But you get great story songs. The Beatles were good at that. Eleanor Rigby, beautiful. Eleanor Rigby, She's Leaving Home, Penny Lane, beautiful little slices, capsules that describe events that have happened in people's lives. And Lord knows, enough people get murdered. This is more likely to put people off murdering than to murder because, forgive me, Delilah, I just couldn't take any more. They come to break down the door. I don't know what the fuss is about. This is a wonderful song, and it should be. It's an adornment to British popular music. People somehow love it. It wasn't Tom's biggest hit. It wasn't his first hit. It's not unusual. It was the first one. He had several bigger hits, but it's the one that survives. It's the one that it stirs something in people, and it's not the urge to murder. It's the urge to sing along and enjoy a little slice of life. There you go.
You've been very humble about your own career, but you have had a very successful career as a writer, a lyricist, a musician. You've done it all. Would you find it difficult to operate in today's climate?
Well, I've mostly written love songs, and I suppose, and the story songs I've written would be in the War of the Worlds. That was obviously a story, and I had the pleasure of writing a battle scene between a turn-of-the-century ironclad ship and 3 Martian fighting machines. And I can assure you, nobody's done that before. Not even Barry Mason, who wrote that fabulous Delilah lyric, has written one about 3 Martian fighting machines and a turn-of-the-century galleon.
Well, you're right. I'm going to interrupt you now because you can't sue me for reading out your...
Sorry.
Well, I'm going to read out one of your classic lyrics, and this would get you cancelled now. It's Big Dipper from the Single Man album by Elton John. I'd recommend it. He's got his own Big Dipper. He knows just what it's for. He's got his own Big Dipper, but he's got his eye on yours. Another ride, another tune, another crazy afternoon, another reason for squeezing your Big Dipper. That would get you cancelled now.
Well, it was a sexual song, and it was a bit of a... Elton wanted to call it Big Dipper, and I couldn't resist it. So
well, I'm talking about sex.
Two young men who go
I'll have to stop you there because talking about sex appeal, Gary Osborne, Elton John's lyricist. Let's talk to Britain's best journalist, Dan Wootton. You are live and you're sexy too, let me tell you.
I was totally engrossed by that. I wanted to keep hearing about the story behind Big Dipper. Mark, good evening to you. Very excited tonight because we have a world-exclusive interview coming up. John Cleese speaking for the first time during the show about the new Fawlty Towers.
John Cleese live on Dan Wootton tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 8.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Some clear spells lingering in the south overnight, leading to a frost in places by dawn. Otherwise, a lot of cloud, actually, and relatively mild, with a breeze coming up from the west-southwest. And a warm front arriving during the night. That warm front will push milder air in from the Atlantic. It will also bring a lot of cloud with it. So any remaining showers in the far north of Scotland easing, but then more persistent damp weather arriving into the north and northwest of Scotland, that reaching western parts of Northern Ireland by the end of the night. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, parts of Wales. But away from these areas, under clear spells, temperatures dropping fairly widely. A few degrees below freezing mostly, but in some shelter spots as low as -7 Celsius, and a few fog patches first thing. But actually, that's where the brightest skies will be across central and southern parts of England. Sunshine remaining in the southeast into the afternoon, but cloud toppling in elsewhere. And that cloud thick enough to give some spots of rain and drizzle over western hills of Wales, the southwest, northwest England, and more persistent rain for the north and west of Scotland at times. But the northeast of Scotland, the cloud will break up well, and here we could see 12 Celsius. Into Friday evening, the cloud remains across the UK, but there'll still be some thinning of the clouds, some breaks appearing through the night, and as a result, a patchy frost couldn't be ruled out across southern parts. But more extensively, we'll see low cloud covering the hills of Wales and the southwest, as well as much of western Scotland, northwest England. So a gloomy start in places on Saturday. It'll take some time for that cloud to lift and break up, and in some places the cloud will remain, particularly over western hills. A few spots of rain where that happens across western Scotland, parts of Wales, for example. But otherwise, some sunny spells.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious, much as I love